A lot of men these days have this idea that opening up about who they are, about what they feel and what they want, makes them unattractive to women and makes them vulnerable to manipulative and dangerous women. But keeping yourself walled up behind this pseudo-masculine tough guy act is actually the very thing that will keep you distant and unattractive to women, particularly the good women out there. It does not protect you, and it does not make you more attractive to women. What it does is it keeps you distant. It keeps you distant from women, it keeps you distant from your friends, and it keeps you especially distant from yourself. And what's funny is we have it in our mind that being this tough guy and not showing what we actually feel and never talking about what's actually on our minds is what it means to be a man. But it's actually the opposite that's true. Being honest with people about what you want and what you feel, just being real, is the hard thing to do. And it's actually the masculine thing to do. Hiding all of that behind a mask of pseudo-masculinity is not what it means to be a man. Now, let me go over a couple of things to explain all of that. Firstly, I want to talk about vulnerability and why we call it that and why it's actually a problem to think of it in that way. So vulnerability really in this context is referring to being open about who you are. You're displaying how you feel. Like if you tell a woman that you love her, that's creating a situation where she could tell you that she actually doesn't love you back. So you're presenting yourself in a way that is leaving you vulnerable to feeling hurt, to being emotionally wounded. And if you look it up on Google, it'll say vulnerability is the state of being vulnerable to being wounded, whether physically or emotionally. And I think the fact that people call it this says a lot about how people think about being emotionally open. I think a lot of young men today are motivated by the desire to avoid emotional pain. You can see this in how popular things like Stoicism are, or Jordan Peterson. I think this is the wrong way to go about life. I don't think you can spend the whole of your life trying to avoid pain, because, well, that's just part of being alive. If you want something or care about something, you're open to the possibility of being hurt by either not getting it or losing it. That's just what it means to care at all. So really the only solution to never feeling pain is just to be dead. And I don't think that's much of a solution to the question of how do I live a good life. Now, the right way to think about this is how can I get and keep the things that I want? In other words, rather than being motivated by the avoidance of pain, being motivated by gaining the things that you love. And this is why I think the word vulnerability to describe what it is that we're talking about being emotionally open, is the wrong word to use. I think just using the word open is a lot more accurate. Because if you think of it as being vulnerable, really you're no more vulnerable to being hurt than if you're closed off, if you're hiding who you are. Because when you're hiding who you are, you're really just guaranteeing that you're not going to get the things that you want because you're not talking about it. You're not actually opening yourself up to the people in the world that you potentially could allow yourself to care about because, you're too afraid, you're hiding who you are, you don't want to open up, and because out of fear of being hurt, but you're guaranteeing that you're not actually going to make a connection. You're guaranteeing that the woman out there who you could actually form a genuine good relationship with will not see the real you. You're hiding the real you. You're hiding all the aspects of yourself that a good woman would actually want to see in you and respond to. In your attempts to avoid pain, you are guaranteeing that you're going to live a life at least full of regret. But I think the way to think of it is being open and honest about pursuing the things that you want. We have in our minds that being vulnerable or emotionally open means to be this weepy, pathetic, person who can't handle life. And that's really not what that means. In fact, the more open you are, the more receptive to emotions that you are, the more you actually deal with the emotionality of your life, the more resilient you're going to be when hard things actually happen to you. The more you wall up, the more you try to avoid pain, that's actually the sign of weakness. The sign that you can't handle emotions, that you can't handle pain. Being terrified of being hurt, being terrified of being exposed about who you are. I mean, that's really the weak thing to do. Being the strong thing to do is to stand tall, stand proud, and just be like, yeah, this is who I am, this is what I feel, this is what I want. That's the hard and strong thing to do. Now, as I said earlier, whether you open up or not, you're going to feel emotional pain. But how you deal with emotional pain is actually a different topic. It has nothing to do with whether or not you open up or not. Whether or not you open up is more to do with whether you allow yourself to feel your own emotions, recognize what it is that you want in life, and be open and honest with other people. Now, if you want to learn more about this, I have an excellent guide on introspection. It goes over what emotions are, how you can understand them, how you can understand yourself, and it goes over loads of things that get in the way of our emotions, like repression and actually emotionalism. Because we have it in our minds that being emotionally open and feeling your emotions means being this, crazy emotional lunatic, but that's not what it means. That's actually, interestingly enough, another way of not dealing with your emotions, when you just feel them to, the max degree all the time and just let them flow out of you without thought. That's actually a way of avoiding emotions. If you want to find out more about that, check out my guide. It's on my website in the description below. Now, when it comes to this idea that being closed off is masculine, I want to talk a little bit about what it actually means to be masculine without going into too much detail, because I could spend a lot of time talking about it, which I will in the future in more videos. Masculinity is not a role. If you're playing a role, you're not being masculine. Because to play a role means to put on a persona that is not you, in the way an actor puts on a role. And that is the way people mean it when they say gender role. They mean that you're putting on some sort of facade in front of the real you, which is somehow disconnected from the fact of whether or not you're a male or a female.
That's correct, Wendy. We all wear masks, metaphorically speaking.
So when you are a man, you are not playing a role. You are a man. In the same way that a tree does not play the role of a tree. And in the same way that when a dog barks, or a cat hunts, or when a bird flies, they're not playing a role. They are acting within their own nature. And a human is no different. When we walk on two legs, we are built to do that. We're not playing the role of a biped, we are bipeds. Everything in existence has a particular nature to it, and living beings operate within that nature, in the way a cat hunts and a dog barks. Humans are no different, and being male or female definitely has an impact on our nature, on our physical nature and our mental nature. It's been shown that our brains are just a little bit different in important ways. So I would say being masculine is really just saying someone is living in harmony or is expressing some element of being a man, of the nature of being a man. Now, men are built to be problem solvers, to go out and conquer the world physically. In fact, our brains are wired for problem solving. It's one of the reasons why it's a common complaint among women that when they try to talk about how they feel or their problems, men want to solve that problem, because that's how we are naturally inclined to operate in the world. Like when a man sees another man working on something, he can have his tools out and he's working on something. Most men are going to just look over there and like, ooh, what is he working on? What's he trying to fix? How's he doing it? We're geared to solve problems and get things done in the physical world. I would say a big part of what it means to be a man is dealing with the facts of reality, looking at the truth and dealing with it. It doesn't matter how you feel at the end of the day. Like, if something needs to get done, you got to do it. It doesn't matter if you're too tired, your family's got to eat, you got to go out and work or whatever. Like, that is a big part of what it means to be a man. You've got to get that job done regardless of how you feel, which I think is why a lot of guys feel like, oh, I can't show how I feel. But I don't think that's really dealing with the hard truth, the reality of the situation. Because how you feel, what you want, and who you are, these are all facts. Your internal world, who you are, what you think, what you feel, these are all just as much facts as anything else in the real world. So there's sort of an irony in people who try to avoid being too emotional are actually, in a sense, driven by an emotion, which is the fear of being rejected by other people, not being loved, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of being wrong, whatever it might be. It's all from some sort of fear. Now, I talk a lot more about this in my guide to introspection. I go over repression, is, I think, where I talk mostly about this. But all this is to say that your emotions and being a man are not in conflict. You are a man and you do have emotions, and it is the weak, unmasculine thing to do to shy away from dealing with the fact that you have emotions, to shy away from communicating with other people about how you feel. The hard thing to do is to deal with other people in a open and communicative and honest way. That's the responsible thing to do. Forming a relationship means dealing with someone else on an emotional level, being open about who you are, about what you want. So I think all of this really comes down to honesty, which I think honesty is a very masculine virtue. It's not just not telling other people lies. It means not lying to yourself. That's really what honesty means, is instead of bullshitting yourself about, I don't feel hurt, I don't feel pain, I'm not upset, I don't feel whatever, whatever you're trying to hide, that's bullshit. You're lying to yourself. And that's not masculine. That's pathetic. And the man who is too pathetic to not handle the truth will lie to himself. And that's not avoiding pain. That's not being strong. That's not being masculine. That's just pathetic. I mean, we all know that guy, right? I mean, the kind of guy who treats everybody like garbage, but just tells himself, nah, they're just pussies, instead of facing the reality of the situation, that is, he needs to change his behavior if he actually wants to have any kind of friends or close relationships. Now, he'd also be the guy who would tell himself, nah, I don't need close relationships, as he cries inside. That is a pathetic, dishonest person, and not a masculine one. So to summarize, the masculine thing to do is to honor the truth no matter how hard it is, which is just the virtue of honesty, which means being honest about how you feel and about who you are, standing true to what you feel, what you want, and who you really are, proudly, and not letting other people's rejection of you, other people's words, or however the world treats you because of that, make you shy away from honoring the truth. Now, I quickly want to just say something about not wanting to open yourself up to the possibility of being used or hurt by, evil women out there. The thing is, you are always going to be at risk to those kinds of women, to bad people. There's always going to be bad people out there who want to manipulate you. But whether or not you open yourself up really won't change that. You won't be more vulnerable just by being honest. Again, this is why I think the term vulnerability is the wrong way to think about it, because you're always vulnerable. But the thing is, hiding who you are and putting on this facade is actually only going to attract other fakers out there, other fake people, other people who don't want to actually be themselves. They're going to be attracted to your facade, and it's going to put off honest people, people who see that you're putting on a facade. So all the honest, good women out there, the kind of women you do actually want to be attracting, are going to look at you and think, wow, that's just some fake, pseudo-masculine loser. I don't want to be around that guy. He's fake. If they see a grounded, honest, down-to-earth kind of guy, that's the kind of man they're going to resonate with. Well, I hope you got something out of this video. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below, and also mention if you want to hear more about the nature of masculinity. I can definitely just do videos, a couple videos about just that, you know, the nature of what it means to be a man, and dive in deep. I can get pretty theoretical with it, but I kind of try not to, because I feel like people might not be interested in sort of the more of the heavy theory, but maybe I can if you'd like to see that. But like the video if you liked it, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for watching.